Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. Today we will be doing a brief review on Netflix's Devil All the Time, directed by Antonio Campos. Now, this movie is about the interconnected stories of which covers good versus evil and sacrifices being made because of the fear of God. Now, throughout the movie, if you hear the narration, that narration is done by Donald Ray Pollock. He is the author of the book. Now, the title of this film is used twice in the movie. Once as we get into the intro of who Willard Russell is, who his son Arvin describes as someone who has fought the devil all the time. After Arvin's father goes off to war, we see what he's experiencing as far as the events and all the unfortunate things that comes with being in the middle of a war, including the fact that we see a Marine who is dying on a cross, and Willard shoots him to save him from the suffering. That then sort of foreshadows everything that we will see throughout the film, and what that represents is the deaths of all the believers. So we see that Willard meets Charlotte at a diner upon his return from the war, and this is also where we see Sandy and Carl meet at this diner as well, which is not a great thing, by the way. We flash forward to Willard Russell purchasing a home with Charlotte, and as we see and watch Arvin develop and grow, we see the relationship that he has with his mother and his father. We see that the way that his father is raising him to stand up for himself, to be his own man, and this is basically shown through Willard beating up two guys of which they had a encounter with in the forest because they made these sly comments. But he caught up to them eventually and beat them up in front of Arvin. And Arvin was then able to see that, whoa, that's what I need to do. That's what I need to become in order for people to respect me and for me to stand up for myself. We then transition into seeing Charlotte get sick, and that basically turns everything upside down. That becomes Willard's arc. So he goes from praying to praying even harder for the Lord to heal his wife's sickness. We then see the sacrifices that he's willing to make in order to make his wife better. And sacrifice is a huge theme within this story, as we talk about what everyone has done as far as sacrifice and what that sacrifice means to them. Is crossing the line of good and bad. So we see that Willard, in an effort to heal his wife, sacrifices their dog. And then when his wife dies, we see that he sacrifices himself. We then see that the pastor at their church, Roy, goes through his own journey of sacrifice as he's bitten by a spider and he's hiding out in this closet. It's dark and he's talking to the Lord and he's hearing the Lord speak to him in some way. He then takes his wife out to the forest and kills her in an effort to allow the Lord to give him that power to resurrect her. And when that doesn't work, he runs off scared with his brother. They're driving, and then we cut to another scene where it's just his brother in the car and Roy is hitchhiking. So he's picked up then by Sandy and Carl. After the small talk that happens in the car, they then take him to a forest, of which Carl expects for Roy to do the do with his wife. And Roy says no, he refuses, and that's when they kill Roy. We then explore this next idea of sacrifice as a now more grown-up Arvin sacrifices for his stepsister, Lenora, who then falls for this new preacher at the church, Pastor T. Garden, played by Rob Pattinson, of whom did a wonderful job, by the way. That was great acting. The ability to be able to adjust his voice to sound completely different than what we hear him normally as, it was amazing. But she falls for this pastor, and she's young and he's a lot older than she is, and as a result of that, she ends up pregnant. She tells this pastor, and he acts as if he had nothing to do with it at all, and tells her that if she is pregnant, that she needs to get rid of it. So a depressed Lenora feels as if she's failed God in some way, and she attempts to end it for herself, and then at the last minute decides that she has the support that she needs from her grandmother and that everything will be okay. So she changes her mind about ending it for herself, but unfortunately she's gone too far and an accidental death happens for her, unfortunately. So because of this, that's when we see Arvin take matters into his own hands as far as justice. Now, Lenora has always believed in forgiveness, always believed that the Lord will deliver for her, versus Arvin, of whom was handed down the teachings of his father in some ways, but doesn't necessarily believe nor forgive. She was all things good for him. And because of what she was to him and what she represented to him, he felt that he had to take justice into his own hands. So we see that he confronts the pastor about his actions. He knows everything that he's been doing because he tells him that I've been watching you and everything you've been doing with these young girls. And he knows that Lenora was one of them. He ends up killing the pastor, and that was his journey of a sacrifice. But the fear of God and sacrifice, that line of good versus evil, is definitely a main theme within this movie. I felt as though the story was told beautifully. Basically, within this film, you'll find that a lot of bad decisions were made for good reasons within the mind frame of the characters. I definitely enjoyed the cinematography of the film, the environment. They opened you up into their world, and not to mention the year of which these events have occurred definitely had an effect on how the story was told, of how women were seen, of how men were seen back in that time. I felt as though that all the characters were cast appropriately, and I've seen some reviews where a lot of people don't necessarily agree that the casting, like a lot of them think that these actors were miscast, and I don't think so at all. I loved Bill Skarsgard's performance. It definitely made me less afraid of him because he played Pennywise, and for a long time I just couldn't even look him in the face every time he was on screen. This time within this film, I felt like he was very genuine with this character. It was very different, and I wasn't thinking about Pennywise while watching this film, so that's a good thing. Within this movie, there was a lot of messages as far as like how people grieve and what that grief could lead to behavior-wise. And there's a lot of discussion of religion as it relates to the real world and how everyone's definition of good and bad is different and unique to them. What did you guys think about this film? For those of you who have seen this, I would have to rate this an 8 out of 10. I do recommend watching this film if you are patient enough, if you love like sort of the character development. I feel like we got a good amount of character development throughout this film. Comment down below if you've seen this movie, and I will catch you guys later in the next review. Bye.